you're probably not going to be very good at the part of your business that can have some of the biggest impact on those margins and keep you afloat. Some of the reasons for not grazing quite as tight in the summer is shading the soil keeps it cooler. Leaving a bit more leaf material behind can help speed up that regrowth at a time when, not this year, but moisture tends to be a bit more limiting and it's a little hotter. So that regrowth is already a little harder. So leaving that leaf material behind means we've got some solar panel, we've got some capacity for that plant to continue doing photosynthesis even though it's just been grazed. And the third one, which is a big deal in the prairies, is less of a big deal for us, but in the summer does matter, is if we have that soil a bit more covered, we're reducing evaporation from the soil. There's still transpiration from the plants, so they're still losing water to the air through being alive and being a plant. But if we can keep that water in the soil, that helps us get through that dry spell in the summer. The other thing I want to touch on with soil compaction, just because I know that you hay and graze these, and my colleagues have been doing a lot of work on soil compaction, especially in grain crop operations, a little bit in hay. And so the messaging right now has been, you know, the things we were told historically that break up soil compaction: roots, freeze-thaw cycles, wet-dry cycles, don't break up compaction because, you know, what does a combine weigh? 7 tons, empty? Right? The force that even with good tires underneath it, the force that machine is putting on the soil is squishing it at a depth where those natural forces are not reaching, right? Whether it's roots or freeze-thaw action. When it comes to livestock-caused compaction, it tends to be in the top 2 inches, okay? It's very shallow. So given time and the right conditions, mild to moderate livestock compaction can be solved with plant roots, freeze-thaw cycles, wet-dry cycles. So I completely get where in your shallow soils, that is the whole profile, because the profile is so short. Whereas down here, we've got a double whammy. It's a deeper soil, yes, but I think you also have a bit more opportunity for compaction deeper because you're also running equipment on it. So for those of you who don't really know what my day job entails, my day job is connecting farmers to resources to help them with their pasture, their hay, their silage, okay? And one thing that keeps coming up, recurring theme, is that anytime, well, for example, I think we're referring to the same project out west with the satellites, Nick?
Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 farms in Ontario.
Yeah, so the team working in Alberta surveyed some of the ranchers involved with that project. And, you know, they're trying to use satellite imagery to figure out, you know, how much grass growth for insurance, whatever. And so they asked the ranchers that were participating in that project, how do you know when to move your cattle? How do you know if you're gonna run out of grass or if you have enough grass? 100% of the answers they got back were, well, I know because of experience. That's fantastic if you have experience. But what if you're a young producer? What if you have started farming as a second career? What if you're new to grazing management? Maybe you've been, you know, working with housed livestock for 20 years, but the grazing part is new. If you don't have that experience, how do you make those decisions? And I don't have stats for farm businesses specifically, but we know businesses in general, new businesses in general, fail within the first 5 years. So some of our group here has grazing experience and some are on the newer side. Those of you with experience, were you good at grazing management in the first 5 years you were doing it? Since we know well-managed pasture is the cheapest source of feed, margins are tight in the livestock business. If you don't have experience and you don't have a mentor or a family member or someone you can draw on to help you get through those first 5 years, you're probably not going to be very good at the part of your business that can have some of the biggest impact on those margins and keep you afloat. So that's why I'm exploring these measuring tools, because they help you train your eyes faster. So this comes back to Jim's mother-in-law being able to look at the pasture and be like, yeah, it's time to move, right? They all matched with the measurements because she was training her eyes and the numbers would have been supporting what she's seeing. So some people are more data nerds like me and maybe would continue measuring after my eyes are trained. Some people might only use this until they get comfortable, and then, refresh their eyes in the first part of the year once they get comfortable. But the idea is, so much of grazing, it is art and science, completely. But in some aspects, I think we as an industry have relied too heavily on the art and not invested enough in the science to give our new producers the tools they need to do well earlier in their career to keep this going. I know plenty of experienced grazing managers in Ontario that have trained their eyes. They can look at a paddock and they know how much grass they need to give their herd or their flock for a day or for 3 days, depending how often they want to move. And they set it up and they're usually right. Occasionally they misjudge it, but they're usually right because they know their pastures that well, they've trained their eyes. Can I do this on a pasture I've never been in before? No. But again, that's part of the thing with the tools, and can we speed up that learning process? Because they did this school of hard knocks, and it probably took 15 years to get really good at, knowing how much grass they've got in front of them. So one other consideration I'll add to this whole data collection, record keeping conversation is get really clear on what it is you want to know. Because if you talk to anyone who is milking cows with a robot, they are drowning in data. And unless they've got a good advisor that knows what to do with all that information, it's just filling up space on a hard drive, right? So if you're very clear about what you're doing, so I'm emphasizing that we can better manage inventory by measuring, but maybe your only aim is just, I want to understand my carrying capacity better so I can make sure I've got stocking rates I'm comfortable with. So maybe you don't need the week to week kind of stuff, but measuring before your livestock go in and after they come out, that gives you enough to get your yields. That gets you some carrying capacity information done. So if you are very clear as to what you want to know, then you can figure out what you actually need to measure and write down. And that means that that's actually going to have value to your operation than just, at the pasture walk they said we should be measuring things and we should be taking records, and then trying to measure a whole bunch of stuff that at the end of the day, does it actually improve your operation in a direction you want to go, right? So get clear on why you want to know the thing and what you need to measure and write down to know the thing that you want to know. And that'll make it a little bit easier because then you've got the why, you've got the motivation to do it.